All right, welcome, Gym Teacher Dreams podcast, coming live from Pickman Studios once again. Today we've got we've got obviously my tag team partner Raymond, and we've got Coach Conroy here, and we're gonna talk some hoops. If you've been on the podcast or our YouTube page, he and I put a video together about high-low. Today we're going to talk about the ball screen series, or how to defend the ball screen. So we've got 6 things up there. We're going to go through each of them quick and talk about them and discuss and the positives and maybe negatives or anything else that we have to offer. So are you guys good, ready to go?
Let's do this.
All right, so the one that I've used the most is the hard hedge. I don't know, Joe, how about you? Which one out of the 6 have you used or most comfortable with?
Yeah, Pick. I think you and I are so much in similarity when it comes up philosophy of hoops that hard hedge has been probably my number one, and then using your terminology, the other was squeeze was the other thing that I probably did second.
Okay, how about you, Ray?
So the majority of my coaching is at the lower levels, and I just term a hedge, but it's probably what you refer to as a soft hedge. I'm anxious to learn, maybe the key points of the difference between soft and hard. Maybe with some of the upper, if I've had a better group defensively, I don't mind a trap, switch, use some switch. It's not my favorite. And then again, like Coach Conroy said, the squeeze, I didn't necessarily call a squeeze, but very, very honestly, that's what I tell the kids not to do. So again, I'm anxious when you say it may be your favorite. I probably just don't understand it. So I'm like the third wheel here. I'm going to learn and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, first off, with the hard hedge, what you're trying to accomplish is, one, you're trying to push that ball handler away from the basket. You're not allowing that person to turn the corner, because obviously, generally, the person coming off the ball screen is a good ball handler. And so with the hard hedge, you're telling him, no, you are not being able to turn the corner. We're going to push you towards the half-court line and make you have to give up the ball. That is the ultimate goal of the hard hedge. Coach, am I right with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That ball handler cannot turn the corner, which I think that's what makes it so hard, especially at the high school level, where maybe you've got a player that's playing from their sophomore year up on varsity, but when you're just dealing with varsity, it's very difficult in a 2-year time span to really get post players to really understand you cannot let that guard turn the corner on you.
Now, I taught it, and it's something that we really had to practice. Was when we knew whether scouting report or they're calling the screen, we forced them into the ball screen. So we were a team that forced to the sideline, except if we heard screen, well, then we changed our footwork, and and then you had to get skinny through it. So it's something that for us it takes a little practice. And when we first start, especially changing your footwork, because if you don't change your footwork, you're not going to get over top of it. So when you hard hedge, we're saying that as this person comes to set this screen, this person's going to step up above, and we're going to talk about how far, kind of what your rules were. But this defender has to get over the top of it for it to be effective. And if you don't, because what I don't like is you get a hard hedge here, he's getting over top, and if he goes here, now they get an advantage. And so we said, okay, screen. We would shift our footwork, and so that we forced them into that hard hedge. And I've been very blessed with having some post players that have been really good at hedging on that. So, Coach Conroy, did you force them into the trap, on a ball screen, or did you just kind of play them straight up?
No, that's actually a great point. That's exactly how we played it. It was really important that our post player was a great communicator and would scout, yell screen left. So if they knew it was screen left, they knew they had to jump to their right. And I think that was probably the other big challenge, right, with young players, high school players, is getting them to actually move and understand you can't let that guy drive baseline. You've got to force them up into the screen. So, yeah, we talked about definitely force into the screen and, as you just said, get skinny over the top of the screen.
And for when I talked about it, one of the things that the guy that's guarding the ball on the hard hedge, his biggest issue was when he would change his footwork, he would then give space to that ball handler, and then he couldn't get over top of it. So we had to work really hard on not just dropping off, but staying on that guy's hip, and then taking that big step over top of it. Because that was the major issue, whether we're hard hedging, trapping, is giving too much space and then still being able to get screened.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we actually use this term. We called it over-under. So what would happen is that when the ball handler would force into the screen, he'd get skinny and go over the screen. But then as the hedger is going out 1 or 2 slides, he'd go under the hedger. So then he could beat that ball handler to the middle of the floor and release that hedger back off of him. So yeah, that the idea of getting skinny, that's probably the most difficult thing. The other thing is when they jump to force them into the screen, they open their shoulders up and they don't get skinny. They literally just run right into the screen.
Right.
Two big issues.
Yeah, I'm sure, Ray, at the lower levels, like you said, this is a difficult concept to work on, because you're expecting probably the post players that haven't had to move their feet an awful lot, and communicate that much to be able to hard hedge.
Exactly. When you guys both had mentioned communicating and saying screen left, like that, communication just doesn't happen. You can tell them, you can describe it till you're blue in the face, and it's just a rarity when it does happen.
And it has to be as they're going up. Once again, as is a big word when we're coaching, not when you're there. As you're going up there, you're calling screen, or even if it looks like they're going to go set a screen, and it's important for him. Now, when me guarding the screener, we wanted to be an arm's length above the screener, because if you got and at an angle to force them, so that meant that if this guy's here, we want him to give an arm's length above here, so that if he's going to go around, he had to go out this way, out wide. Now, obviously, some of the good handles can split it, but if the guy that's doing his job on the ball should help with the split. But my rule was get an arms above that guy in a stance, force him that way. Did you have a different rule when you taught the hedge with guy guarding the screener?
We wanted to meet him as he came around the screen, so we called that flat back. So if you think about it, the screener, right, should have his back to the middle of the floor. And so we would tell the post player or whoever was guarding the screener, you want to have your chest be flat on their back and sliding right out like it's like a closet door, right? So that closet door has been opened. It's not closed. So you literally just slide as that guy comes around. And as you extend out, your arms are out wide so they can't split and come back middle. And then again, as soon as you take 1 or 2 slides, it was 2 slides and then release and run back to your player, because by then that guard should have gone over under. So that was just what we called it, flat back. So we'd say over under, and the post player's got to be flat back on the guy.
I do like that. That makes sense. Flat back. Now, one of the things, obviously, the first thing, we jumped ahead a little bit. First thing to do is you got to call the screen, right? You got to communicate with it. And then as you go, you talk, initially probably with the young kids, and as you work, they run into each other. Because as you said, if you stay too long, that could cause a problem. So my rule was that, once again, the guy that's guarding the screener, his job is no layups. So, and then the guy that's guarding the ball, his job is no jump shot. So if you, as you come off of it, you got your back and you're looking right at that guy, if you see him screened, you're going to have to stay on him longer. So it's really, once again, it comes down to that man-on-man defense. If I don't get beat at any point defensively, whether it's off the ball, on the ball, my guy just shouldn't have to help. And the same thing for that. If I hedge and that guy fights through tough like he's supposed to, I can get right back to where I need to get, and so everyone else can rotate back to their guy.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking, Ray, something that you were saying about the lower levels, and when I was a varsity coach in Woodstock, especially, we talked a lot about, what was step 1, phase 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So level, I can completely understand that maybe the switch, even though you don't like it, is the best thing. But even if out of the switch it forces communication, that's step 1 to being a great basketball player. So I can totally see how doing that, especially at the lower levels. I know we're not talking switch yet, but you talk about strength of players, right? How many young kids coming off of a ball screen are going to be able to really attack the basket or hit the jumper to where that switch is really going to punish them, where maybe at our level, if you switch with a big on a small, that small is just going to go right to the basket and score, right?
Yeah.
I totally understand where you would do that, completely.
And you got pick. You had said, you know, the no layups, and really, that's sort of the bottom line where I'm at. You know, that's why that hard hedge isn't something, you know, I talk about a lot. We're not pushing anybody to half court. We're more no layup. You know, so there is certainly a discrepancy. There are levels, and you know, you guys are way ahead of me. But like I said, I'm here to learn. So keep it coming.
And I'm talking mostly from the wing, because from the top, it's a little bit different where it's, you know, and I don't probably we could hit that another time, because the top there's different rules and you know that you need to do. I'm not a big believer in the hard hedge. You know, if the guy's coming off the top, I don't know, Joe, if you spend just a minute or so. I mean, I don't like hard hedging if that ball screens, you know, from free throw line extended up, you know, here. I'm not a big fan of hard hedging when he's coming away from the basket.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that, Pick. Yeah, really the hard hedge, we really only did the hard hedge when the ball was even above the free throw line. So we had, you know, we sectioned off the half court in quarters. And based on where they were at is exactly what we did, just like you're doing there. So that we called the middle of the floor, I think we talked about this before, we called that the channel. There's no way we're doing any kind of hedging in the middle of the floor there. That's a recipe for disaster. And, you know, throw it out there. If you watch, you know, anybody who's watching this, who's a basketball fan, you can pick any Virginia basketball game to watch a hard hedge, and their post players are like flawless at it. It's amazing how they play that. But like you said, they only do it on certain sides of the floor, and it's above the free throw line, and it's, you know, probably about, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet off the top of the key. You start getting closer to the top of the key, forget it. That's a recipe for disaster. You're going to get killed.
Right, and I'm going to go right into number 2, because, you know, it's basically the same thing, but instead of going back to your guy, you're going to hard hedge into a trap. So it's really the same fundamentals, but now we're going to stay with that guy, and hopefully that guy takes a couple dribbles, picks it up, and now we squeeze them in, and we rotate as we would like a zone press or some type of trap. I trapped. I would say there's a couple years where I trapped quite a bit, depending on scouting, depending on who it was, but it can be very effective, once again, to take the ball out of the ball handler, especially, you know, let's say if they're running their point guard off the ball screen all the time, and you want the ball in his hand. One of the ways to do it is to trap and then keep that out. So we would do the same thing if the ball was here, you know, same fundamentals as he came up on the screen, hard hedge, same fundamentals, fight through, he dribbles up, he's going to slide and we trap, and be really no different rules than what we did. How much trap have you done out of the ball screen?
Whenever I had an athletic big, like a few years ago, I had a kid who was really, really athletic at that spot, meaning he could really move. We did that a lot more often. I think the biggest thing, to be honest with you, is if you want to trap on the wings, where I feel a lot of players make mistakes, and I don't know if it's a coaching thing or players just get excited, is they want to trap immediately on the screen. You can't really initiate the trap until you force them into the ball screen and allow them to use that ball screen. Otherwise, what ends up happening is that's where you end up with the reaching fouls and everything else, because now the guy puts it on the floor and you're reaching as they're going out of the trap instead of trapping as they're picking up the ball. And now they have nowhere else to go with it, and there really should be no desire to reach on it. So I really like the trap, especially when you've got or not only athletic bigs, but when you have like players. So if you've got a big that's quick and you've got a guard that's quick, you know, if in the end they had to switch because the guy starts to turn the corner, I'm not as afraid to trap in that scenario, I guess.
Yeah. Did you do any trapping off of this after you worked on the hedge there, Ray?
Well, the trapping is something that I like to do. I think we've talked at different times in our office how defensively I do like to aggressive when I'm able, and Joe had mentioned it has a lot to do with personnel. I don't know if I really had athletic bigs, you know, you're talking junior high level or whatever, but if you had athleticism, now, Joe, you mentioned, you know, with the hedge at a lower level, how many guards can penetrate, you know, real aggressively off of the screen. In this, with the trap, how many guards at the junior high level, when faced with a trap, have the wherewithal to identify an open player, okay, or the ability to toss over a trap or split a trap or anything like that. So again, at my level, yes, I do like the trap. just because of the aggressive nature of it. And you oftentimes have passive people, handling the ball for, the opponents. So I do like the trap. It's probably for different reasons than why you guys would do it, but personnel plays into it, ability level of your opponent and your own team played into it.
And there's nothing more, I have definitely some pet peeves of coaching, and Ray coached football with me for a long time and knows that generally when the hat came off, either it's going to hit the ground or I'm going to kick it. But one of my pet peeves is when you get into a trap and you're reaching rather than just hands up, squeezing tight and making that guy, pick up the dribble, throw over you, or whatever the case may be. Nothing more than you get a great trap, do everything that you wanted to do, and then you get a foul because you're either bumping them with your belly or you're reaching in.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And a lot of times it's funny because you're trying to educate young men on becoming great leaders and what's it like to be a part of a program. And we always talk about a guy who in the open floor goes for the reach and a steal, and now it becomes 5-on-4. They sold out their teammates, right? To me, that's the same thing that a guy does that fouls on a trap. That's a mentality. Look at me, I stole the ball. No, when you're the trapper, that should be the last thing from your mind. You're hoping for a 5-second call in high school, or you're hoping for him to make a bad pass so one of your teammates can get the glory of getting the steal. And true basketball fans would recognize that in the game, that it happened because of the trap. But that absolutely drives me crazy when a player fouls, and especially in a great trap where the dribbler's just picked up the ball. Can't stand it.
Yep, for sure.
Your hat comes.
All right, the next one that we're going to talk about is a switch. Now, I do have quite a bit of experience with this because, at the time, Coach Stacy, where I was assistant with, he switched all screens, and it was very effective when we had all guys that are very similar, height and ability, so a switch can be very effective, especially even at the lower levels. But once again, it has to be done right, and that's one thing that bothered me is, anytime you switch, you have to come together so they can't split you. And that's one thing that, if you're going to switch on this ball screen, and as this guy come up, set that screen, once again, I don't want to get so high where that he could go through, because obviously this guy that's going to go here is going to stay underneath it. And then he gets screened there and he can switch it. So my rule that anytime we screen would be, you have to come together, almost, right next to each other, so that when that guy comes off, you're still stepping out there, or like you said, the flat back, but this guy can't roll because we've come together, or he can't slip it as well. We've come together where if he tries to go, he runs into you. So that was my biggest rule, is if we switched, you just obviously call it first, but you had to come together so that they couldn't slip it or seal the guy that's guarding the ball handler and get a layup there. Because that's probably the ultimate thing, that when you do get a switch, the first thing is, okay, switch, that means that the row should be open. That's what you teach with the ball screen. Right. So I would say, what do you have to add with that?
Well, you made mention of it, and I think that goes into just that concept of the flat back. One of the things I guess I should have mentioned earlier, but this is a great time for it, is that on the flat back, that when you press up and you're on their back, another little trick that we teach is for the defender of the screener to grab their jersey on the back. And so now they can't roll fast. And then when you want to switch, that gives you time to be low and not let that guy split you nor come around the screen too fast. It also gives the ball handler the opportunity to push into the screen and have time to get below the screener so they can't get rolled on too fast. So yeah, that's the only thing that I would add, is that in the flat back, we grab a good chunk of the jersey so that the guy can't go anywhere, and it just kind of slows the play down a little bit. And it's really hard to see on flat back because the official can't see that because you have your hand inside. Not
right,
that
and you're squeezing, so yeah, it's in tight. It's like when we talk about, on defense, if we're press coverage, or blocking, as long as you keep your hands inside and keep them tight, you can hold the piss out of people.
Little gamesmanship. I love
it. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. It's not illegal.
Now, Joe, you mentioned the flat back. Just out of curiosity, I know this is not a time you could quickly put it up on your screen, but do you have like little film clips, cut-ups of flat back in action?
I actually do have some of that. Yeah, I do. I'd have to go kind of hunting for it, but definitely that'd be something we could look at in the future for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, that it's an effective way to stop the ball screen. For me, I didn't like it because I generally wanted to. I didn't switch many screens at all in the man, because if I was the best defender, which Ray knows I wasn't, that I wanted that best defender to stay on that person. I don't want to switch, because if you watch the NBA, what do? They just bring the guy who they want to attack up to the screen. They switch it. Okay, let's giddy up. Let's go at him. And that's one of the big reasons why I didn't like to switch.
Yeah, well, I think I remember some Sunday mornings in the gym at Sycamore playing hoops with you, and I know you never wanted it. We never wanted you to have it in your hands on the offensive end, but I don't think I was ever turned on the defensive end when you were on that end. So I think I might have seen firsthand what you were talking about.
Yeah. That's why as we get down the list, squeeze is way easier for me, because I just body him on. I don't have to do very much. Make sure it didn't shoot over me. So yeah, defense. Yeah, it was no fun. The only time I played defense was in college because they made me. All right, number 5 here is icing. Now this one, didn't know a whole lot about it, and watching the Bulls when Thibodeau was coaching, that's all you heard defensively. Ice, ice, ice. And I never ran it. I didn't really know what it was until watched the film, watched some, and it's like, okay, you read up on it and tried it, and I really liked it. At times, it was very effective because, once again, it kept the ball on one side of the court. And most offenses, if they want to get from one side of the court or get to the paint, whereas this job is to keep it on one side. And so what we want to do as ice is, we talked about the hard hedge, that when I guarded this guy, I came up here. Well, now the guy that's guarding the screener is going to be, somewhere arm's length below his guy. So somewhere about this area. And when I'm guarding the ball and I hear screen, I'm going to stay on the high hip here. And now it's my job not to let them turn the corner. So I've got to come up high and almost flat back here. And I'm going to force him there. He can't use the screen because I'm not letting him. And now if he does dribble, he dribbles into my big, and I'm coming down with him. Obviously, the roll, we haven't even talked about, rotating. It's no different. But this way, it gives him a different look, and it tells him that you're not going to be able to turn the corner if the guard does it right. And this guy is going to be here if you try to refuse it. So it was effective for us. Once again, this guy's got to be either really tall or really nimble to do it. And the biggest problem that we had with icing is, once again, that guy that's guarding the ball, when he would hear it, would give that guy space, and that allowed. So instead of staying tight on the hip, he would jump here. Now the guy splits it. So the key to it is you've got to get tight on that hip so that he can't split it. And when he dribbles, you're just on the side, kind of goes into him as he comes back. And eventually, if you do it right, he's going to do that. If he's going to keep dribbling, he's going to dribble to the baseline, okay, or have him do reverse out, and you stay high and then you're right back into it. So like I said, I have ran it, had some success. I know, the Bulls ran it forever. So to me, that's what you're trying to do when you ice a ball screen.
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing that I'd throw in that we could have talked about too, we talked about personnel, and Ray especially talked about, when you're talking about ability level and really reading your team, I think the most successful coaches that we watch at every level figure out how to use their personnel strengths and hide their weaknesses, right? So I would throw out, when we talked about all these different ball screen coverages, this is a great time for it. Honestly, when we would try to ice, we would try to ice on the right side of the floor. And the reason we would do it is because the ball handler would be coming off with their left hand. And unless we were dealing with a left-handed point guard, it's really difficult for a right-handed point guard to come left to the middle of the floor if they're being forced to the sideline. And so that's another thing for coaches to just consider, is the idea of what are the strengths of the players you're playing. Maybe you want to soft or trap or do certain things on certain sides of the floor. based on what the strength is of the opponent that you're playing. And so we did a lot of that. Like if we were playing somebody that had a left-handed point guard, we might try to ice on the left side of the floor, which means we're just not going to let them reverse it because they're not as strong with their right hand. We always talk about it too. Think about every high school offense in America. What side do they bring it down? They always start their offense on the right, and then they want to run a ball screen immediately on the right. Well, that forces the ball handler into their left hand. So that's why I think icing on that side of the floor is so very, very effective, you know?
You know, at the lower levels, Ray, do you think, you know, if a head coach came in and said, okay, we're going to ice this, you know, do you think that this would be an effective way to defend the ball screen?
Well, one thing that I did mention as you were drawing it up is how it lends itself to a trap. You know, as the defender, the on-ball defender moves themselves and baits you into the post defender, it's moving towards a corner, and I could see a trap happening. So I think it's certainly something you could do at the lower levels. But one question that I would have for you maybe at the end, you know, these are 6 things that you can do for ball screen defense. How many of them realistically would you feed to your varsity team? You know, because Joe, I don't know the clientele you work with, but I kind of know the kids that you're working with, and I don't know if they could handle 6 of them. You know, maybe 3. You tell me. You know, I mean, there's not a huge difference between a hard hedge, soft hedge. You said you don't do one versus the other. Like, realistically, what is in your bat belt, your repertoire when you enter a game?
Well, I'll talk first because once again, you and I are like here because that's exactly what I was thinking. As that's one thing I was going to talk about is, you know, how much of these can you do at one time? Because, you know, you only have so much practice time. You don't practice 4 times, and you want to be really good at it. I mean, you could do all 6 and only be okay at all
right.
6,
and
or you can work on a couple and be really good at it.
So then I want you to finish. But what I'm saying is, if that's the only way you defend a ball screen at the middle school level, I think it's great. You can handle that. But you can't tell middle schoolers, here's 3 different things we're going to do. You know, so if that's your one, it's great. I actually love it. But so go ahead. You at the middle or at the high school, how many can they handle?
Generally speaking, for me, we hard hedged, we trapped, and ice. So, you know, as we got in, you know, as I got later into my career. So really, you know, that's about, you know, because the hard hedge and the trap is very similar. We would only switch if it's guard to guard and, you know, ball screen, which they didn't do a whole lot, though we considered a dribble handoff a screen. And so we would switch that guard to guard. But yeah, I wasn't able to throw a whole lot at them. You know, for a game we worked on, let's say, like Coach talked about, or, you know, we were able to put ice in just because we had done it before. But really, to get good at something, you have to work at it. And that's why, you know, one of the key things that people don't understand is skill development, wink, wink, is that to become mostly in the season, it's about team stuff and defense, you know, preparing for an opponent. Whereas in the summers where you make yourself a good offensive player on your own, you know, we coaches put you in position, but then in the season we got to prepare. And also we spend more time on defense. And so it's vital for you to have those offensive skills already, because we change game plans based upon personnel. It could be personnel or team wise. And they have to at least have an idea of it. You may not, you know what I'm saying? Joey, anything to add to that? I kind of rambled there.
No, and I think that was actually great stuff, Pick. I think from April to October, for the most part, players are making themselves great players. Well, that's offense, right? I mean, you work in the weight room, you work on speed and quickness, that's defense, right? So during the season, more of the team concept is defensive oriented, right? I used to tell my players, like, I'd rather teach you how to play and then you go play than us calling a play. Like, we're going to run this play, right? We're going to run the Bulls. Forget that, right? And so then defense, we worked a lot during the season on that. And I will say this, not to sound egotistical, but we had a defensive plan in place where we built it from 1-on-1 to 2-on-2 to 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5. And Pick, I know you and I are very similar, and we've worked together in different avenues. And so I would say we could do 2, right? And what I mean by that is I think switching is something that comes naturally to kids because they do it in pickup games, right? So we didn't practice that. So I would say that we did the hard hedge and we did trapping is what we really worked on. And then I would say it's interesting, Pick. I know at one point when we were talking about these different ball screens, my last couple of years when I walked out on the floor as a varsity basketball coach, I looked out there and I saw 12 or 13 like players, meaning there just wasn't a huge difference. And so, I'm honest, my last couple of years, what we did was we worked on switching, but not switching man to man. We did do that. We worked on switching defenses every time down the floor because we didn't feel like we had to worry if this guard got down the floor first, he had to get the heck out of the post to guard somebody because he was 6'1" and our post player was only 6'3" anyway. So really, I'm with you, Ray. I think if we did 2 effectively in a season, we were probably really good at 1. And then the second one was we were okay at it. And then switching, I just think kids do naturally.
Mm-hmm.
That's good stuff. Yeah, I agree. So the next one is the soft hedge. It is something that, for me as a coach, I haven't spent, any time using it. But the NBA, you see, they do an awful lot. Now with the NBA, of course, the guy that's soft hedging is a 7-foot with a wingspan of 7'5", where, they could play with those guards. And, and once again, you've got 6'7", whatever, 6'3", come fighting over top. So in terms of the soft hedge, what they're trying to do is take away the jump shot, and that guy and not maybe letting your big get in foul trouble by trying to hard hedge. And maybe his feet are a little slow. So the soft hedge allows him to still defend that guy. And because if he pulls up, he gets his arm up, makes a difficult shot, and the other guy still fights over the top. So what we're saying, that one, we talked about the hard hedge coming up here. Well, now as they come over, this guy's still going to come fight over it, but this guy's going to stay right here. And now, like I said, his job is to contain that ball handler so that he can't get it, because his job is still no layup, but contain him until this guy can fight over top and get back to his regular position. Once again, I think it's more effective in the NBA setting. And as Joe's going to talk about it a little bit, it defeats the purpose because a lot of us at the high school level, we don't want no middle. Because when people get in middle, bad things happen because we always have that 1 or 2 guys that maybe aren't the quickest and aren't able to rotate back to the guy. Well, when things get in the middle, then everyone's got to help and, bad things happen for us. Whereas in the NBA, you've got these guys that, can take one step and get from one side of the lane to the other and also still affect this guy's jump shot if he's coming over. Plus, you got another quick guy trying to fight over top to stop that. So, Joe, go ahead and you talk a little bit about what, a little bit. You said you ran it a little bit at NIU and just your thoughts on it, I guess.
Yeah. So I think the key is there, when you talk about the NBA, it's such a different animal than what we deal with, right? You're talking about guys that are 6'11", 7 foot, 7'1" with wingspans that are 7'8". They can soft hedge. Their only concern is making sure that can somebody get up and contest a jump shot. I don't think they're as worried about somebody getting into the lane because the guy guarding the ball is 6'3", 6'4" anyway, right? But one of the things that we were talking about there just a few minutes ago, just kind of off camera, we were talking about the concept of in collegiate basketball, you're dealing with a 30-second shot clock. So the idea of the pack line defense where you're allowing middle, it's not middle into the paint. That's what people don't understand. The pack line defense is really just allowing ball reversal through the top of the key, not through the middle of the floor. And thus, in collegiate basketball, a soft would actually be very effective as long as they don't get into the paint and eventually they get down and end up taking a contested jump shot, which is really think that I too personally never really ran a soft hedge where the guy is off because I always felt like the players that I had, if you let that person get out and turn the corner, that was just a foul waiting to happen as somebody attacked the basket. Or they're jump stopping and somebody on the weak side over helps, and now they got to kick out for an easy shot on the backside. So I see, I know that it's very effective for a lot of coaches. I just haven't had a lot of luck with it.
What do you think, Ray, in terms of
Well, you guys hit on – well, I mean, you guys hit on a lot of the points. You know, like I'm not worried about a jump shot necessarily, and, you know, I'm not dealing with 7-footers who are hedging. You know, what I have is an offense that is, you know, heavily ball screen, everybody wanting a layup. The hedge for me is off the layup. I'm not worried about jump shots, layup, and I don't want a hard hedge. Shifty guard to get around them. So I mean, you guys really hit on all the highlights, you know. And as Joe said, you know, the NBA is different than college. is real far away from high school, and it's certainly worlds away from, you know, the clientele I'm used to working with. So yeah, I lean on a soft hedge versus a hard hedge, which I mentioned at the open, but you guys already hit on the highlights.
Okay. And I think maybe the next time we get together, we talk about offensively how to attack each of these, which would be kind of the next step, which is always kind of fun. You know, that's why we like to X and O to figure out, you know, what we do against teams when they do these different concepts against, you know, let's put the ball screen. And our last one is what I call squeeze. Coach Conroy or Joe, you call it jam. So once again, lingo's all different, but this is one that I haven't done too often as a coach, but as a player that doesn't want to have to move his feet too much and guarding the ball screen, I tried it a couple of times, and I'm like, holy cow! It, you know, this is very effective because it stops the roll completely, and there's not a lot of guys who can stop and pop, you know, all right behind that screen if you do it right. So if we're talking about the squeeze or jam, we're saying that when that guy comes off that ball, as this screen is current, I am guarding him. I am just getting as tight as I can here, and I'm bodying him, okay, legally. And then as this guy, the key to it is stay tight. But once he gets to the level of the screen, he's going to kind of, so as he gets to the angle, the level, he's going to beat him here. And then now he has stopped him. My body is not allowed the roll to get there. And if this guy tries to stop, and if we do it right, he tries to stop and pop, you know, I got a hand up on him enough because I've squeezed him or jammed him enough to really bother him. One of the issues with this one is, same thing as a lot of them is, if I give this guy too much space as I get there, well, yeah, he can stop and pop and not be close enough to, you know, I cannot stop that because he's too far away from me who is jamming it. So it's key that, to me, that is the guy that's guarding the ball, same thing. He's got to stay tight, get to the ball, then quickly get over so that this guy, you know, is tight to that ball screen so I can stop him on the jump shot as you go. So that's kind of where I see it, but it takes away the roll completely. It completely takes that roll away. So I don't know what your feelings on it, on the jam or the squeeze.
I really like it. Didn't use it a lot. We'd use it more situationally, just because of the idea what we talked about when we were kind of talking about icing ball screens. You know, there's only so much time that you can spend trying to do all these different concepts for one thing, and how many teams are super, super effective with the ball screen offense anyway, right? That's normally setting up something else, either a good roller, so you're worried about that, or they're trying to penetrate enough to get a kick out and maybe an extra pass into the corner for a shot. So we did the same thing on the squeeze. I know you mentioned earlier we call it jam, but the only thing that we did different, or maybe not even different, you might have done this as well, Pick, is we actually let the defender of the ball decide if they wanted to get skinny and go over or go under. It was totally their choice, right? And so we just said, do what you can do because we're not worried that that guy's going to shoot a pull-up, right? And if they knew they could lock them up and go over, we were okay with that. Otherwise, what we try to teach the mentality or the IQ side of it is, why are we jamming? Why are we letting you get off of that defensive guy or off of that offensive guy? Well, we don't think that guy's going to stop and shoot a pull-up jumper, but we do think they could do damage getting into the paint. So get off your guy and get around that as fast as you possibly can and stop the ball penetrating. But there was times like some players I've had in the recent past that they're just like, I can stop that guy. I'm going to get skinny and go over the top, even on the jam, because we were more worried. We jammed when we were more worried about the roller, when we were more worried about the post player, either maybe stepping out and could shoot it, step out and get a catch and then drive to the rim. And then maybe we got a little slower footed guy trying to guard that. And now that's going to cause us a problem, maybe get somebody into foul trouble. So that's just some different philosophy on that.
I like how you drew it up, and I misunderstood earlier. Maybe it was off the air when we were talking about it. Again, at my level, I don't want someone getting skinny and blowing, because then they're trailing, which I think is exactly what the offense wants to do at my level. But I like how, once you drew a pick, bodying up and squeezing the screen and letting the on-ball go under. I think that's something, again, that could work at my level. But again, right now you sold me on ice, so it's like one or the other. But I do like it now that I've seen it drawn up.
To me, jamming or squeezing is one of the best ways to defend the high ball screen. So when you're up here and this guy's setting that screen, I think that's a great time to do it, because you squeeze, and once again you have a good angle to stop that. So that's something that maybe you have in your repertoire that you think about it if you've got a team that run it from the high, because I think that's one of the best ways to defend the ball screen from the top.
At my level, you're not going to get a lot of good three-point shooters, and like you said, Pick, the one thing that you're worried about is the step back, shot, because there's some separation there. But as you guys mentioned in the offseason, kids are getting better at shooting, especially behind the arc. So it would just concern me a little bit more if I were in you guys' positions. But what you've drawn up, I do like from where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that stuff looks good, and and as you talk about the squeeze, another thing that you could throw in on what you just diagrammed there in the middle, we called that low show, and that is, you're just off a little bit and you're creating space so that guy can go under and go between, but you're also not going to get smashed. So we do some low show as well.
And as I was during this, I remember we had a couple teams that ran the high stuff, and we actually did what you said. What'd you call it?
We call that low showing. So
we did some low show.
So the guy can't turn and go right to the basket, but we're still almost in line with our post player, so they can't roll either. But that gives you a chance to get between. So you're going to go between your teammate and the screener, and you're going to go under. So we call that low showing.
We did do some low show and some squeeze a little bit against some teams that once again ran this. So it's up to you Ray, you talked about what your team can handle, because at the varsity level, we hope that from whatever grade they start from up to us, they've been shown or done enough where they at least have an idea of some of these. Be really good at what your number one is, but at least have an idea of what to do, of what this is. So when you say it, they're like, oh yeah, we kind of know, and we work on it, for a couple of days or a week, whatever you have for the plan, that they can at least do it enough to take it away enough to say, maybe that other coach says, oh shit, whoa, whoa.
Explicit content.
That's all right. Okay. Enough to say, oh, we can't run that play. We can't run that play because this is what they're doing to it. So, we showed you 6 different ways to defend the ball screen. We've all talked, 2 to 3 at the most is what we generally did with it. But once again, Ray talked about a lot of personnel. Okay. Knowing your team is going, we at the high school levels, we don't get to recruit, most of us anyway, so that we don't get to recruit athletes into us. I'm amazed at the teams or the coaches that have run the same thing for 20 years and have the success. I applaud them for doing that, because in my mind, and I overcoached on it sometimes, that it's my job to put these kids in position to have the most success. And if we had to change up little things, I did that based upon their ability level.
Yeah, and that's the key. In high school, I am amazed by that as well. There's some coaches that when you were saying that pop into my mind, they they ran the flex every year, no matter who they had, and they still won 20 basketball games. Or they played zone defense for the past 15 years, and they win 20 games a year. They're always in the regional championship. I always felt like I had to challenge myself in the off season to look at what the personnel could do that I had, and then try to make slight adjustments, not major ones, but slight adjustments. And these would be the things that we would pick from. Like, hey, what do we think we can be most effective this year doing with the kind of guys that we have, you know?
And I think, all coaches do that at all levels. I know, we did that football at the middle school. We would adjust from year to year based upon our personnel. I think that's just being good coaches. So, as we close here, for those who are watching, whether you're trying to pick up something little, once again, trying to pick up one thing that will make you a better coach or help your team. That's why we do this. And also because we enjoy talking basketball together. But, whichever way you do it, first thing, you got practice. And you got to be really good at least one of them. And then you can kind of put in one or two based upon your team's ability physically and mentally as you go in. So any last comments there, Raymond?
Thanks for having me on. I love listening to you guys talk basketball. I learned something today, and I always feel like I learned something when I'm an ear in the vicinity when you guys are talking basketball. So thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Coach?
Yeah, thanks, Coach. I really appreciate it. I love talking hoops with you, Ray. I've really enjoyed getting to know you here over the past half a year, which is outstanding and a lot of fun. And again, I learned too. I learned things today, and not just terminology. I'm talking about concepts and movements and different ways to look at things. So always appreciative of this, and kind of looking forward to this the virus going away, so we can actually get back out there and work with kids one-on-one, and team setting.
So as I said here, maybe our next installment will be, offensively what to do against all of these. I do have a lot of the Illini basketball games where if I could cut some of those, we could break down the Illini, and some of the things that they did. Because one, they run that pinch to post that which you run, Coach. You ran towards the end of your career. So maybe we can get some video on too and kind of talk about it. That's always fun too. So thanks, guys. This has been Gym Teacher Dreams podcast, marker board edition, talking about the ball screen. All right, subscribe, hit it. We've got 11. We need 1 million once again. Okay, if you want to see Mr. Raymond Boardman naked, subscribe. Okay, we've got CoachPickHoops.com is my blog. This will be on YouTube page, Gym Teacher Dreams. So we got a lot of things going on here as we try to rule the world.